Welcome everybody to the Optimizing Paid App Marketing Campaigns webinar. I'm Carl, and we have Krista on the call as well. Today we're going to talk about how tracking works for apps and how you can use that for building marketing campaigns for your app. We're going to discuss how to run Google App campaigns, Facebook ads, and Apple search ads as well. And Krista is going to talk more about optimizing Google App campaigns. So a little bit about the presenters. I'm Carl. I'm running EPPC, a performance marketing agency that I founded in 2013. We're also Google App Partner Agency, Google International Expansion Partner, and the Google Premier Partner. And I'm also a Google Certified Trainer, so we do these trainings as well. And before that, I used to work in the Google EMEA headquarters in Dublin. And that means I've been working with Google Ads now for almost 12 years already. So actually started working at Google before there was even the first Android phone on the market. So I've seen it all develop. And handing over to Krista.
And recently I switched over to the apps business, and I'm supporting agencies like EPPC in developing their apps capabilities, and currently working with all kinds of agencies across the EMEA region. So really happy to be here today.
Thanks for joining us, Krista. Okay, but I will kick it off from my side, and then Krista will be taking on the second part, talking more specifically about Google app campaigns. So I started off, if you joined the last Hangout we did, I showed quite a bit of stats that various tools have been collecting and sharing. So if you want to check the previous webinar as well, we have a recording up on YouTube. I will share the link as well, or maybe somebody can share the link in the comments as well if you're interested in checking that out. But just a few slides on what's been happening in the recent weeks. So app revenue is still growing. It has been growing strongly since for the last couple of months already, but it's still going strong. So whereas installs have been declining a little bit already. So the growth has been speed of growth has been declining a bit. And in the US, especially, there was a revenue spike after the stimulus checks went out. So I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the stimulus checks that went out in the middle of April to Americans. So that also did bring a spike in revenue to the apps as well. What else is interesting? So we have TikTok. Just was announced that TikTok had the best quarter for any app ever and reached 2 billion installs in Q1. So that's a pretty impressive number. And we're not going to talk about TikTok ads today here, but I think soon we'll have to do another webinar for that as well. So the ad platform is still in the early days, and you have to ask for an invite to access it. You can't access the self-service platform just like that. But I'm pretty sure with the current growth numbers, they'll do something pretty soon and open it up to more people as well. I've already heard that some people have seen good results there, and as a TikTok fan myself as well, I've seen the content changing quite a bit as well. If last year it was mostly just interesting to see what the youth is up to nowadays, then now it seems like the grown-ups were bored and all joined TikTok as well. So keep an eye on this as well. But so let's get started with the actual optimization process. And before we go into the optimization process, I want to talk about tracking. So this is a complicated topic, and we could talk about this for a long time, but I'll try to outline the main things that I think are important for running successful app campaigns. So you need tracking before you start. That's a given. So there's no way around it. If you want to get good results, you need to have some sort of tracking in place to optimize your campaigns. So you can run Google App Ads just without any tracking as well, because Google Play connects to Google Ads. And on Apple Search Ads, you can also run an ad campaign for iOS installs, because again, it's the same company, but you still should figure out your tracking and make sure you have the events in place. So for that, for apps, if you're not using already, so I suggest starting with Firebase or some other mobile measurement partner. Firebase is for free, whereas the others are paid. And some options out there are Branch, AppsFlyer, Adjust. Check them out. They all have their own specifics, and for each use case, you might have a different tool might be the most suitable for you. But they more or less do all the same thing. So just Firebase is for free, but it doesn't connect automatically to Facebook ads. So even if you're using Firebase, then you're most likely at some point going to want to use some other tool besides Firebase as well. So if we talk about tracking, then how does tracking actually even work on mobile? And why is it so tricky? So if you think about a click, so if a person clicks on an ad, then instead of going to a website, like with web ads, they go to the App Store. And on the App Store, on your website, you have your Google Analytics or other tracking provider there, and you can measure everything what's happening on your website. Whereas if the user lands on the Google Play listing or Apple App Store, then that's you don't have any insight into what's happening there. So in order to do that, you need to set up a tracking system. And what happens is then that if you click on an ad on mobile, then the attribution provider records the click, says that, okay, there was a click that happened, and then a person installs the app. And when they install the app, you still don't know who the person was who clicked, so there's no link yet. But if the person then opens the app, then the SDK gets initialized, and you can match the person back to the ad. So that's why you need this link in between the ad click and the App Store, and you need to have the SDK of the measurement partner on your app. Some important terms to know of. So how does the tracking actually work? So there's no cookies. That's the picture here. It's trying to depict no cookies. There's a couple of ways how you can match users without cookies. So there's deterministic matching. You use an advertiser ID for that. So everybody who on their phone, you have your advertiser ID on your Android or iOS, and if then the user's advertiser ID matches the person's ID who clicked, then it's pretty easy to you can determine exactly who the user was. But some people have their identifier turned off, especially on iOS. It's around 20% of users. So you cannot determine everybody with this system. So there's also probabilistic matching, which means that instead of using actual data, you're kind of guessing. So it's called fingerprinting. You use the device name, type, operating system, platform, IP address, etc. So if you see that a person with these characteristics clicked on an ad and then opened an app shortly after, then you're pretty sure that you know who this person was. So you're guessing. That's why it's called probabilistic. It's probable that this is the user, but it's pretty accurate because most people install the app and open the app right after they click on it as well. And if we talk about this matching, we also need to talk about attribution windows as well. So this is another topic as well. So if with probabilistic matching, if the person waits for a while and before opening the app, then it gets harder to match it back to the person who clicked on the app, for example. And an example of how attribution also works in the different tools and in Firebase and other analytics platforms. So let's say you have a user who clicks on an ad on May 1st, then on May 2nd, they install the app, so they wait for a day, and then on May 7th, the user opens an account. So what happens is that Google Ads and Facebook Ads, they say that the click, install, and event all happened on May 1st, whereas your mobile tool will say that the click happened on May 1st, install happened May 2nd, and the event happened on May 7th. So they look at time of the conversion. So this is pretty similar still to how web attribution works as well. Now, what happens if a person clicks on multiple ads? So you have a person clicking on a Facebook ad, then clicking and the next day on a Google ad, and then on the third day, they install and open the account. So Facebook ads will tell you that the click, install, and open event all happened on May 1st. Google Ads will tell it happened on May 2nd. And then the analytics platform will then give you, will tell you when the click, install, and event happened based on the actual time. So this is where the MMPs or analytics platforms come in handy as well, because then you can also measure the last click conversion of where the last conversion came from. So it's not bad that both Facebook and Google attribute the events and conversions to itself, but it's also good to have a third-party platform where you can analyze this as well. So for optimization purposes, if a person clicked on a Facebook ad and if a person clicked on a Google ad, they both most probably played a part in the acquisition in the process. So they're both important to track and use for optimizing events. But it's also good to see in your analytics platform to double check. So if you see you got 100 conversions from Facebook, 100 conversions from Google Ads, and your analytics platform says that you also got 100 conversions, then you didn't get 200 conversions in total, but you got actually 100 conversions because everybody clicked on both ads. So I'm not going to go into all these questions, but if somebody wants to discuss any of these, we can do a round of questions in the end. But if you go into the attribution space, then there's a lot of things to think about. So I really suggest that you read more about this topic as well, because if you want to run successful app campaigns, you really should understand how this works. But this is more of an advanced. These are more advanced questions, so you can start campaigns already without going into all of these questions. But this is something to aim for, to figure all these things out. And if you were wondering what this limited LAT thing means. I mentioned that on Android or on iOS, it's around 20% of people who have this switched off. So if you're on an iPhone user, you can go and switch off ad tracking. That means that advertisers cannot track your advertiser ID. And what that means is that Facebook actually doesn't show you any app install ads. That doesn't mean that you're not going to see any ads at all on mobile. You'll still see ads, but they'll just be less relevant and web-based ads instead of app install ads. Facebook doesn't want to show these because they can't determine exactly who actually converted. On Apple Search, you can opt out of targeting LAT users, but these can be 30% cheaper because less people are targeting these, less advertisers are targeting these people as well. So this is something to keep in mind. So if you're only running Facebook ads, for example, then you're completely missing out on the people who have switched off, who have limited ad tracking. So now, going into the practical tips. So Krista will talk more about Google Ads, but I have some tips lined up here anyways. So Firebase, we talked about Firebase. This is super important. So if you want to run successful app campaigns, you need to have some sort of tracking in place, and you need to have events in place as well. Even if you have already Adjust or AppsFlyer or any other tool set up, then I'd still suggest to use Firebase events for Google app campaigns. Some people have seen better results with Firebase events, even though it's the same event, but because it's a Google thing, then you might get better results from there because it just works well. I'm repeating myself here and from also the last webinar, but it's really important to have in-app events in place. If you're only optimizing for installs, then you're going to get installs, but installs don't really mean much because half of the apps are uninstalled very quickly, especially on Android. So some people just like to install apps, but doesn't mean that they're buying. And we've seen that on iOS, people are way more likely to make a purchase and spend more money. So an install from Android and install from iOS is not going to be equal, and an install from one country is not going to be equal to an install from another country as well. So just working with installs is a first step, but you should work your way up to going and targeting in-app events like signing up for an account, a free trial, making a purchase, completing some sort of level in a game, etc. So anything that's that a user can actually do in the app is better than just having it installed. You need to have patience. So with Google Campaigns, the campaigns are fully automated, as we discussed last time. So you have very little control over what's happening with the campaigns, as while Google is trying to find the best audience who's going to convert the best. So you need to give it some time. Around 2 weeks, I'd say, is a good time frame to wait. You might be surprised at how bad the results are in the first days and how good the results can be in the last days of this 2-week first test period. If you do only have a small fixed budget, and that's all you want to do, you want to run a 2-week campaign, then I don't think Google Ads might be very risky to try for this. So you might be better off using a platform where you have more control over your ads. With Google Ads, I suggest to aim for always-on campaigns. So you start the campaigns, you leave the system to learn, and once it has its learnings, you can continue the campaigns, well, I want to say forever, but for a long time. What I also suggest to do is group multiple countries together as well. So apps, if you're an app that has the luxury of just targeting as many countries as you wish, because you don't have a physical product, and you just it's a matter of opening up new targeting for a market, then the best practices, Krista is going to talk about that more later on, is that you should have a budget that's around 10 times your CPA. So let's say your cost per event or cost per, let's say, a free trial is 10 euros, then your budget should be around 100 euros minimum daily budget. Now, if you want to have 100 euros daily budget for every country you're targeting, it's going to add up pretty quickly. So what you can do is you can group different countries together by tiers. So you could have similar countries, let's say the Nordics in one group, UK and Ireland in another group, or have Western Europe in a group, for example. So the more data you have in a campaign, the faster the campaigns will learn, and the better performance you will get. So, and if you're optimizing for purchase events, for example, then that's especially good. Then you don't have to worry so much about combining the similar countries together, because you're going for a purchase. Whereas, for example, if you're going for free trials, you might have a lot of free trials coming from one country, but they might not be actually starting to use the product. What I also suggest is to target as many countries as possible as well. So if you've got the in-app event targeting figured out, then you don't have to limit yourself to just English-speaking markets. So you can target English language with English ads, and target pretty much the whole world, because it's the ads are going to be shown only to people who already understand English anyway. So there's no risk of showing ads to people who won't understand your ads. So that's a pretty powerful option for app marketers. This is an interesting trick to use as well. So if you think about app campaigns, you might think that, okay, I don't have any control there whatsoever. But actually, there are some tricks how to control your traffic as well. So for example, if you know that your conversion rate on let's say older Android phones is really low, that these users are not that valuable, then you can just remove your app for those older Android versions, so that these people can't even download the app from Google Play, and this way the ads will also not be shown to them. And this is also a good time to maybe think that is your app even working properly on older phones as well? So there might be some issues there as well, and you're more likely to get a purchase from somebody on the latest operating system than somebody who is still on let's say Android 4 or something like that. Videos. So videos are a super important thing for app ads in Google Ads. This is one of our clients. So when we started ads with them, they had these 4-minute videos, and we were wondering, okay, maybe this is too long. Should use 30 seconds. Actually, a longer video will allow you to sell your product more. So you don't have any real limits there. So you could test different ad length as well. You could try 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, and see which one works best. But you don't have to limit yourselves to 30 seconds. There's no rule that it has to be 30 seconds like you see on TV most of the time. So a longer ad means that if you can capture the audience and they won't skip, they're actually interested in your video as well, then they will see the whole thing, and that's more time for you to sell your product. That does mean that your video has to be interesting as well. If your video is really boring, nobody's going to watch a 4-minute boring video. And the next step there is, in order for a person to watch those 4 minutes, you need to attract them in the first 5 seconds, because after 5 seconds, they can skip the video, and the first 5 seconds are crucial. So if you don't get the attention of the person in the first 5 seconds, they're going to skip your video, and the rest of your video might be the best video ever, but nobody's going to get there. So you have to capture the audience in the first 5 seconds. And you could also check what the best are doing. So there's no way to see exactly what sort of ads are companies running on YouTube, but you've probably seen the Grammarly ads. I think almost everybody has seen the Grammarly ads. Well, everybody is maybe a bit too much, but a lot of people have seen the Grammarly ads probably. So if you go to their YouTube channel, sort their videos by most popular, the first video has 530 million views. It's a 1-minute long video, so I really doubt that this is just a viral video. It's probably just an ad. And the other ones as well, so 1-minute videos. If you click through the ads and you notice that the first 5 seconds are sort of really catchy, then they're probably used as ads. Not all ads are publicly listed, but many are. So this is a interesting hack to go and check what your competitors or other companies are doing. So I wouldn't maybe focus that much on your competitors actually, but focus on the ones who actually are doing YouTube ads well. So there are some companies who've really nailed it, and some who don't really know what they're doing. So check the ones that are nailing it. So if you're captivated by a YouTube ad, that's a good sign that they've done something well. If it's really boring, then probably there's no point in trying to copy them. And another thing, don't make too many changes at once. So ideally, you should only change your bids and budgets 20–30% at a time. If you make too many changes, if you make too drastic changes on bids and budgets, then just the system is gonna go crazy, and it's gonna go back to learning phase. So keep it steady with the changes. If you wanna change your bid, go for 20%. Wait for a day or two, and then change the bid again. So if you make too drastic changes, it might send the system on just on a weird path. So that was it about Google Ads from my side. I'm going to quickly go over Facebook ads as well. Going to be real quick. No, I'm already eating into Krista's time here a little bit. But so first thing, if you're doing Facebook ads, separate Google Android ads and iOS ads. Put them into separate campaigns. This way they're easier to manage. And as we already discussed, iOS users are usually more valuable than Google Play users. So if you're going for a specific event and you have the same cost per event or cost per install, you might be getting a lot of cheap installs from Google Play. But actually, the more valuable users are from app iOS users. So if you have them all in one campaign and you're using CBO, or campaign budget optimization, that might mean that the system is looking at, okay, this ad set of Android, for example, is getting a lot of cheap installs. I'll just move all of the budget there. So again, this is where the event targeting is really important. So you need to make sure you're optimizing for the right events. And this way, campaign budget optimization can work really well, because Facebook is doing the job for you. And if some ad set is working really well, it's gonna just move the traffic towards that ad set. But in order for that to work, you need to optimize for the right event. And what sort of event to optimize for? So this is actually relevant for Google Ads as well. Depending on how much volume you have, you can choose if you go for the final make a purchase event, or you start from an install event, or you go for something in between. So each ad set should have around 30 to 50 conversions a week. So you should pick some sort of event that gets you this amount of conversions. If it's less than that, then the system is going to really have a hard time learning and finding the best users. So you could start from installs, move up to signups once you have more data, and eventually get to optimizing for purchase events. Don't go too narrow with your targeting as well. So if you have a very narrow targeting, you have a risk of saturating the audience very quickly and getting a very high CPM there as well. So broader audience, give the algorithm more room to work with. And if you're targeting really broad, then the CPMs are always going to be cheaper than with very narrow focused targeting. Just different audiences. So lookalike audiences are usually the best way to go. You can use most active users, biggest spenders. You can so this is what we found works really the best. Go for lookalikes first, and you could also exclude lookalikes. So for people who have churned, for example, you could just exclude those from campaigns. And you could, we discussed that the broader you're targeting, the cheaper the CPMs are. So you could go for very broad targeting, and this does require that your product is also targeting a fairly large audience as well. If it's very narrow, then this is a bit risky. But if you have a broad audience, then you just let the algorithm find the conversions for you. And again, don't forget to exclude the audiences you use in the other campaigns, so you're not cannibalizing other campaigns. And for competitors in Facebook, if you don't know this one already, then in Facebook it's really easy to see what the competitors are doing. So, for example, I've been seeing Calm ads in Spanish for a long time already, and went to their to ad library and check what sort of ads they're running in Estonia. And it does indeed seem that they're running the Spanish ads in Estonia. So I'm not sure if that's on purpose or not, but if you're wondering what your competitors are doing, go to Facebook Ads Library and you get an overview there. So moving on to Apple Search Ads. A few minutes briefly here. Apple Search Ads will show you only installs. So this is a big difference between Apple and Facebook and Google. You will only see install data in your Apple Search Ads account. You won't see any event data, so you won't be able to optimize automatically for events in Apple Ads. This is a major difference. So this is where it comes in handy to connect your Apple Search Ads to your analytics provider, and there you will also see campaign or ad group level data on which campaigns in your Apple Search Ads are actually driving the events as well, not only the installs. These are if you're starting from different starting off, this is the best practice to segment campaigns, have brand keywords in one bucket, competitor keywords in another bucket, generic keywords in another bucket. It might also, a different system might make sense for you, but this is a good way to start. So again, the important part is that you want to be able to see which groups of keywords are bringing you paying customers, for example, or the best sort of customers, and you can see that data in your analytics tool. So figure out a structure that works well for you, so that you can optimize for this as well. These negative keywords as well, definitely check search terms. If you're used to Google Ads, Google Search Ads, this will be a familiar exercise for you. Go over the search terms and see which keywords make sense, which don't. Don't ignore the LAT users. These can be 30% cheaper, as I already mentioned as well. If you are doing some sort of audience targeting, then the LAT users are all ignored. So if you want to go for LAT users as well, make sure you have an ad group that doesn't have any audience targeting, so you will reach those people as well. Don't undervalue your campaigns. So if you're looking at your MMP, they will only show those people who actually opened the app, like we said before. So the SDK is initialized when the person actually opens the app, but there are around 20 to 30% of people who install an app, but actually don't even open it. So this data won't match, or they might not open it within the attribution window. So the numbers you will see in Apple Ads and your MMP won't match, because they're not looking at the same thing. And more installs is also a signal for App Store rankings. So this is something to keep in mind as well, not only for Apple Ads, but for other ads as well. So the more paid installs you're getting, you're going to have also a better organic ranking as well. So if in web advertising, Google search, and Google paid search and organic search aren't linked, then for apps, actually more installs is a signal for app stores to improve your ranking organically as well. So this is something to keep in mind for your campaigns as well. And just to finish up, if you want to check our case study that we did with Synctuition, go search for Synctuition and Think with Google. Think with Google also has all kinds of other case studies up there regarding apps as well. So I suggest you check it out, and we'll send the link afterwards as well. And this is me already quite a bit over time, handing over to Krista.
Thanks, Carl, and no worries at all about the time. I think there was some really useful tips in your guidances, which will be helpful for everybody. If you don't mind, I would suggest I present. It's a little bit easier with switching on the slides. So I will be talking about Google Ads and best practices. And since I know that not everybody who's present today actually attended the webinar 2 weeks ago, I just wanted to briefly recap as well what we discussed last time. So we discussed, first of all, how one of the benefits of working with Google Ad campaigns is that you have the scale that you don't really have with any of the other Google Ad products. So you can reach, as Carl already mentioned, YouTube, you can reach search inventory, display inventory, and also, for example, Google Play inventory. And we also talked about how this is an automated product, which I know can seem a little bit like a black box, especially if you're maybe used to working with Google products for a long time. And Google Ad Campaigns was actually one of the very first products which were automated and are based on machine learning. We also talked a little bit about how you can use creatives to actually stir the algorithm. And last but not least, we talked about how really understanding what your key objectives are as a business is super, super important. And I think maybe the most important step in setting up your strategy for your campaigns, whether you work, with app campaigns on Google, Facebook or Apple, it really doesn't matter, but you really need to understand where in the app marketing lifecycle you currently are and what your key objective is. So as mentioned briefly last week, the lifecycle of every app is pretty similar, and based on that also metrics like usage, downloads and revenue might play a different kind of role and maybe a different importance at each stage. So really important to understand, is it user volume you first want to focus on, or monetization, or maybe churn rate, and then based on that you can set up your Google app campaigns. And we have different types of app campaigns available at Google. So you can cluster them according to whether you would rather want in-app activity, which would be something like, let's say a user can sign up, or perhaps leave their details in the app, or perhaps also complete a purchase. Or is it rather something like install volume, which means that all you want is pretty much acquire new users, and you don't really care if these users do a specific action in the app, but the sheer volume is your priority. So if install volume is your priority, then we have a product called Google App Campaigns for Installs, which is mainly focusing on the target CPI, which is the cost per install. So you put a bid in the system saying this is how much you would like to pay for an install, and the algorithm will guide the campaign to achieving that bid and creating that volume for your campaign. If you, however, already identified a certain action you want to optimize towards, then you can already switch to Google App Campaigns for Actions, where you would actually put in a target cost per action. And instead of focusing on install, what the algorithm will do is actually try to find those users that are most likely to complete that action within the app. So instead of volume, it's really about those high-value users. And last but not least, we have Google App Campaigns for Value, so focusing on target ROAS, which is even more advanced. So you have a positive return on ad spend and are profitable and can monetize your app. And one of the questions we get a lot is, how do I actually keep maintaining the app campaigns when I've set it up? And an important thing to keep in mind is, again, that this is an automated product based on machine learning. So maybe Carl will have the same experience of working with, for example, Synctuition, but it is pretty much like an infinite loop of, first of all, guiding the engine, so feeding the engine with the information you wanted to optimize towards, be it the bid, the budget, or the creatives, or the event you want to optimize, or anything else, and then also learning from the engine. So feeding it and learning from it. And this is pretty much what you need to do in order to keep the performance of your campaign alive. So first of all, we would recommend follow the best practices which are publicly available in the Google Ads Help Center. Definitely invest in ad assets. So as mentioned last time as well, invest in text ads, image ads, video ads, anything you have in order to reach as much inventory as possible. Also, you should focus on in-app actions. As Carl mentioned, it might be nice at the beginning just to focus on the volume, but the volume doesn't necessarily mean that you can become a profitable business through your app. So really try to identify those actions that bring you the most high-value users and try to optimize towards those actions. And the fourth point is spending time on strategy. Since there's very little you can actually do with Google App Campaigns manually, since it's all based on machine learning, it really frees up your time to think about more of a long-term strategy, what you want to achieve, when the right time is to switch over from one app campaign style to another, and also find a good strategy, for example, for your creatives that you develop. And I also wanted to share some ground rules, because I know we get a lot of question about it, and even in the last webinar we had a few questions in the chat about it. So what are some of the key things you should keep in mind when you set up the campaign and also make changes to the campaign? So first of all, it is really important that you make all the changes very carefully. So once you've set the campaign up, any changes that you make shouldn't be too much to disrupt the algorithm. It is important for the ad campaign to collect data, and in order to be able to collect data, it needs to have some kind of stability so it can actually take the time to collect that data. So I want to run you through some of the ground rules that we usually discuss with agencies or also client partners, and these are all taken from the Google Ads Help Center, so definitely have a look there because it's all publicly available. So first of all, if you, for example, set up the campaign, but you put in a bid that might not be super suitable, which means that maybe your campaign isn't scaling, or perhaps it's also just not performing the way you want it to be, you can, of course, change the bid. However, you should wait at least for the campaign to generate 100 conversions before making a bid change. The reason for this, again, is to let the algorithm actually learn. So you won't be able to properly evaluate the campaign performance if it hasn't had enough time to gather those 100 conversions. So really important to wait for that. Second of all, it is important that any CPI changes you make shouldn't be more than 20%, which Carl already mentioned, per day, again, to allow the algorithm to have some kind of stability and not being disrupted too much. Then we also want to ensure that whenever you create a new goal for a campaign, actually a new campaign is set up. So don't try to both optimize towards install volume and in-app actions in one single campaign, because this will just not work at all. So if you have had enough installs already, have had enough install volume, and then want to switch to in-app actions, you can set up 2 different campaigns to optimize to those different goals. And lastly, we want to ensure that you have enough creative assets that actually fall into the best performance bucket. So within the Google Ads account, when you set up a Google App campaign, you will be able to see a creative asset report, which ranks the assets you put into the campaign. And you want to ensure that you have as many assets that fall into the best bucket, so that perform the best, are able to attract those high-value users. And if you see a certain pattern amongst those best performers, you can try to use that as a blueprint and develop more of those best-performing assets. So these are some of the guidelines which I would really recommend for anybody who's starting off with app campaigns to follow. Another big question that we get is around bids. So what is the right bid to start with? What bid should you be optimizing towards? And the answer is it's trial and error, right? We have some insights, of course, which we can look at based on historical data. So, how did perhaps certain advertisers in certain verticals perform? And based on that, we can perhaps also give a recommendation to advertisers on what a good bid is to start with. However, it is not a guarantee. That's why you will need to try and maybe fail as well with certain bids you put in. The reason why we would, however, always encourage advertisers to start with a higher bid than might seem plausible for them is because it's really, again, super important to understand how the algorithm works. So the CPI that you put into the campaign when you set up the Google Ads campaign is not necessarily the CPI that you will get at the end. But what the CPI that you put in will do is actually set the boundaries for the app campaign to experiment, learn, and calibrate. And then this will be able to unlock certain inventory across, for example, the search network or YouTube or the display network, and find maybe higher conversion rates in available inventory that you might only be able to unlock when you put in a higher CPI. So again, if you put in a CPI of $9, that doesn't necessarily mean that this will be the CPI you end up with, but rather that the algorithm will explore the inventory across Google that has inventory available, for example, for $9 users or placements. So definitely go in with a more aggressive bidding at the start. Try to let the algorithm work towards 100 conversions. If you see that the bid is way too high, just lower it. If it's still not high enough, then try to increase it by 20% per day, but not more. And I also wanted to share a few cheat sheets with you. I don't think I need to go through everything in detail, but I think because you get the slides, it's really good for you to just have a good overview of when it makes sense to use what kind of campaign. So again, to start with app campaigns for installs, this is really good, for example, when you are launching a new app, you're very new to the apps world, and all you want to do is to have as many installs as possible. And the way the algorithm works here is based on past auctions to look at the likelihood of what user is likely to install the app that you're advertising. And the bidding best practice here is that you put the budget as 100 times the target CPI, and you would try to aim at 100 installs over a day, which means around 3,000 installs over 30 days. So if you have that, that means that your campaign is actually ramping up really well, and the algorithm is able to generate the needed data volume in order to optimize. And in the UI setting within Google Ads, this would be get new users for your app. So it's actually very simple to set this campaign type up. Then if you still want to focus on generating as many installs as possible. However, you already have a certain action in mind that you would like users to do, like, for example, sign up in the app. Then you can also use a campaign type called App Campaign Installs Advanced, which means that it's still prioritizing volume of users, however, already trying to find those more high-value users who are likely to complete an action in the app. And the best practice around bidding here is having the budget set at 50 times the target CPI and 300 installs over 30 days, so less than the simple installs campaign. So that would be around 10 installs per day. And lastly, app campaigns for action. So if you have enough volume of users and you really want them to perform a certain action, have a good idea of what the cost per action is you want to optimize towards to, you can use this. And the best practice for bidding is to have the budget at least at 10 times the target CPA, again, to give the algorithm enough room to explore and to actually test different inventories, test different users, and then optimizing towards your CPA. And a good guideline to look at is the amount of app events per day, which would be around 10. Again, if you're far off from 10, try to lower or heighten the bid a little bit, 20% per day, so we can get to those 10 in-app events per day. Again, this will all be shared with you, so please have a look and try to follow the best practices as much as possible. I also wanted to give you a brief sneak peek of a product that is there not to acquire new users, but to re-engage them. And this is called App Campaigns for Engagements. And Carl already mentioned that, some, or maybe actually most users will download an app out of curiosity, and then perhaps they will never open it, or maybe they will forget about it. And this is why we have this product called App Campaigns for Engagement to help users rediscover your apps. So the app is already installed on their phones, but it's inactive, they have never converted to a certain action, and perhaps they've never even opened it. So what this is doing is to, again, leverage the inventory that we have across different Google properties in order to entice the user to reopen the app and do a certain action. And this is a fictional example of a game called Adventure Duck. So, you know, usually with the Google App Campaigns for installs, what you would see is an install button that users should click on. Then they get directed to the App Store and they can download the app. However, with the App Campaigns for Engagement, it actually shows the user that it's already installed. And the way you could use creatives again to entice the users is, for example, show them different levels to complete. So, for example, they've only had 3 levels that they did, and you show them, okay, there are actually more than 25 levels. So why don't you just try the app again? So another way just to create a longer lifetime value for your app users, and also just to ensure that the churn rate isn't too high. And I also wanted to briefly touch upon the structure of when you set up campaigns. Another question we get a lot questions about. So when you have your Google Ads account, you can set up different campaigns. We suggest setting separate campaigns up for iOS and Android. And under each iOS and Android, you would focus on perhaps installs first, and then move on to actions, also 2 different campaign types. And then you can have different ad groups as well. So ad groups will help you, for example, to cluster certain creative themes. If you, for example, are a retailer and you have perhaps a summer sale, and then perhaps you also have maybe a special campaign for discounts for Mother's Day, this is a good way to be able to create more alignment within the creative messaging across different ad groups. So lastly, I just want to leave you with this final slide. So yeah, don't be scared by the machine learning of Google App Campaigns. Definitely, if you're new to it, start with simple UAC for installs, so Universal App Campaigns for installs, and then move your way up more to the right, where it will get a little bit more complex. But this is also where you can definitely rely on the help of, for example, publicly available information in the Google Ads Help Center, or also revert to agencies like ePPC that have expertise in setting up those campaigns and managing those campaigns. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Krista. So, do we have any more questions? So I got already a few questions about where to learn from, where to learn more about mobile app marketing as well. So the resources that Krista already mentioned. So there's definitely a lot on Google Ads, on the Google Ads Help Center as well. But as I mentioned here in the comments already as well, that all the platforms that we discussed, Branch, Adjust, etc., they all have pretty good blogs as well. Actually, really good blogs. So I invite you to check those out as well. So also for non-Google Ads related information, you'll learn from there as well.